Welcome back, everybody, to the Life Coach Labs show and podcast. I'm your host, Chris Angel. I'm here with my friend and guest today, Ivan Farber. Hi, Ivan.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
I tried to combine your first name and last name all in one word. It's Ivan Farber. Ivan Farber. Ivan, we're talking about. So here's the deal. We're in a conversation about leadership, and I'm excited to talk to you today because of your extreme. The amount of hours you've put into this particular skill and how it relates to leadership, I'm excited for. I want, for everybody listening, I just want to create a little context. I think as an industry, the life coaching industry, you know that it has such very little regulation, like less regulation than real estate agents, right? Like you don't need 90 hours of clock hours. You just can say you're a life coach. And I think one of the things that's going to happen is in order for us to create the change we're trying to create as life coaches in the world, we're going to have to step up in a bolder way, a stronger way as leaders, so that people take our industry seriously, people take us seriously. And for a long time, life coaching has been this sort of nice to have. Even sometimes people roll their eyes like, oh, you're a life coach. I've heard in different forums on Facebook about people saying life coaches like, network marketing and pyramid schemes. We'll just teach coaches how to be coaches, how to be, look, there, you can already start to see the leading indicators of people discrediting what you and I are trying to do for the world through coaching. And so that's why this season, this lab we're in right now is about leadership. And so I've asked Ivan to come in to share his expertise because what he does is brilliant, and we all can learn something from him. Ivan, welcome. And I know you're an author. You wrote a book called Conversations. Would love for you to speak a little bit about what you do professionally and also your book a little bit for a second.
Professionally, I'm a relationship manager at a privately held financial services company. We work with investing, and I keep people comfortable and help them do planning. And in many ways, there's a big overlap with life coaching. That's kind of my approach. A lot of people will take a very technical approach, and I choose to take a life approach.
Right.
As far as my book came about because I really have put conversations into a science as well as an art form, and as I believe it is a skill that we can develop and improve. And we don't really put a lot of emphasis on that. We have public speaking classes. We have different classes that we go through along the way, but is there a class called Conversations 101? Is there a school about it? Of course, one of my long-term goals is to create a conversations university.
Yeah, I love that.
But in terms of where the book came from, I had 10,000 conversations with clients and enough experimentation, a lab, if you will, to write a book. And actually, since writing that book, I've had another 10,000 conversations with clients. It really reinforces for me that the strategies in the book are everybody, but they're definitely effective for the people that I teach and coach and mentor.
Yeah. I love the, so if I think about relationship management, nurturing relationships, and the kinds of upsets people can have that you're saying, like you're keeping them calm, you're keeping them in a good frame of mind. Like, again, I can totally see the correlation to life coaching. There's a lot of and there is a leading that you're doing because we're trying to continue maybe we set a plan. I don't know how your business works, but maybe there's a plan that they're following. They get triggered by some event in the market, and now they want to take their money and run, or they want to do something. You're like, hey, we got a plan. We're following a plan. And so you're leading them, you're guiding them, you're a guide for them. But the tool you're using, which I love, and I think this is such a good fit for life coaches, is you're using questions as I'm assuming a lot of what you're doing is using questions as the tool to lead them. Can you explain that a little bit about like how that works, the questions of things and leading?
Questions are the main tool for guiding a conversation and for leading. And there's a lot of misconception and misused questions Where I think it really starts is having a command of when to use an open-ended question versus a closed-ended question.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've experimented 20,000 times,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so clear when you use them. And I write about it in my book, and I really spell out when to use open, when to use closed. There's an overuse of closed-ended questions. And it's not that closed-ended questions are bad. It's just that they're overused and they're relied on and they're used solely, when what I've found is it's the proper sequence of open and closed together that really guides a conversation.
Right, right. I think a lot of life coaches are naturally wired for open-ended questions because we're curious, we're empathetic, we often want to hear what's going on. So we're used to asking open and ended questions because we're trying to uncover something. I think sometimes we might err on the side of too many open-ended questions and not leading it forward. Like we're so explorative in what they want to say that we forget about the leading part. How do you balance, like, that feels true for me. I think closed-ended questions can feel very, it shuts off the conversation to me. So it's uncomfortable for me.
Let me say a little bit more about my conversation model and where that fits in. So I'll answer it in a broader context.
Yeah.
So I have a model that I call the CLEAR model, and CLEAR is an acronym for create, listen or learn, explore, address, and resolve. And at each section of the model, you're asking a closed-end question to see if there's agreement or alignment before you move on to the next. So create is putting out an agenda and gaining agreement on what the conversation is for. And so you need the language of a closed-ended question to isolate and confirm that agreement. So closed-ended questions are perfect for that. And I think you're right. I think life coaches are more inclined to use open-ended questions, at least to start. And so inside of create, you're both asking, what would you like to accomplish? Open-ended question. Then using active listening and then confirming, okay, this is what we're creating here, Chris. We're creating a conversation about conversations for life coaches and being leaders. So as you go through the different stages, having the clear understanding of how to gain commitment before you proceed is really important. And so I have an acronym, or I could say a mnemonic device, for the words that I use and that I think are really effective closed-ended questions. And the mnemonic device is IRS-PR. The IRS,
like the tax entity, IRS, PR.
Yeah, the IRS could often use PR.
Right. Right.
But the words are invite, request, suggest, propose, or recommend. And so what I find is people often worry about, how do I get agreement? How do I force or compel action? And it's through asking a question, through asking questions.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So as you were sharing about clear, and now we've got a mnemonic device. So now I'm overwhelmed with all this. By the way, this is all stuff that you teach. So this is in your book, Conversations.
Correct.
Yep. But what popped for me when you were speaking was, I want to talk a little bit more about this CLEAR acronym. And then I have a place I want to take it as it relates to leadership beyond leading a client in a session. That's where I want to start right now, because I want to have some context for what that looks like. But I have a secret sneaky reveal I want to copy and paste that into as it relates to leadership and leading transformation in the world, not just lead transformation with a person, but leading transformation in the world. But let's just cement this CLEAR thing into an example, maybe, so we can hear what it sounds like with someone as we go. So how can we do that? Do you want to?
I'll take you through it.
Okay, good.
And you don't have to be anybody but you.
Perfect.
Just be you.
Those are my favorite kind, when it's not fake. It's just, we'll just have the conversation. It's perfect.
So Chris, what would you like to accomplish in this conversation?
And by the way, this is you getting clear, right? Or this is
Yeah.
you. What's the C again? Clarify.
Create.
Okay, so we're creating some purpose.
Yeah.
I would, in this conversation, I would like for people to see how this framework feels as you and I talk about it, and then have them remember it so they can use it in their own coaching sessions, as well as how they end up leading in the world for transformation. That's what I'd like to create.
So you want them to feel the framework.
Yeah, right. Feel this conversation from C to L to E to A to R. Yep.
Yes, we're in the C. I would like to add to what we're creating, and that is, I really want to serve your community. And I feel like the distinction of clear and other distinctions in my book can really serve life coaches.
Yeah.
So would it be safe to say that we're ready to have the conversation?
Yeah. So that's a close-ended question.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Because we want agreement on what we're creating.
Yes. And if I'm sort of pausing and sort of not pausing, because it's all the same conversation, right?
Yes.
So meta. And there is, what I liked that you just added to that was something that you wanted for you. I think a lot of times what we do as life coaches is we're so focused, this is true for me, I'm so focused on what you want to create that I don't offer or add what I want to create. And I think that's really important in leadership, is like, it's not just you're leading Chris to what he wants. Like, this isn't you, this is about your work and what you're trying to do. So there's something here for both of us. And I think that's an important distinction here to add as we talk about create. Like, well, yeah, as a life coach, what are you wanting to create here?
The goal is to serve the community.
Say that again. I think it broke up on me. What was say that part again?
I added to the framework that my goal is to serve you and your community.
Yeah. Right.
Now, the L in clear is kind of setting the stage. It's not a separate part. It's really to remind you that for the next 2 sections, you're going to be listening and learning. Mm-hmm. And the next 2 sections are explore and address. And you can't explore without questions. So that's where questions just come in. So now we'll go back to just restating. Our goal is to see how we can serve your community and help them understand what it feels like. Mm-hmm. Chris, you're very fond of frameworks.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you think a framework is and what you think will be valuable?
Yeah. And just so I'm clear, we're in the listening and learning section, or are you now exploring?
I'm exploring, with listening and learning being the overall theme.
Okay. Got it. And so ask me one more time about frameworks.
You have felt that frameworks are important. I know that personally, knowing you for a few years here. What specifically does your community need? What do the life coaches need?
Yeah, good question. So if I think from a place of leading in the world, not just leading with a session with a client, because I think unless you're a brand new life coach, if you've been in life coaching for a while, you found a rhythm to how you ask your client questions and explore things with them. But often what's missing is, how do we take this very, I would call it spiritual thing we do? It's very ethereal. It's very swirly. Like, there's lots of parts to what we do. And so when we go to tell the world about what we do for clients and the vision we have for the world and how the world could change, we kind of get lost in all the minutia of it, all the moving parts of it. And so a frameworks to me help us simplify how to talk about the things we're doing, the change we want to create in the world.
Right. The framework is the support. And I very specifically started with the word need, because the entire model that I espouse is needs-based. Like, I'm looking for what is the need that Chris has. Right. So one of the ways that we can help your community despite framework? What else do you see would be helpful?
I'm thinking of it in terms of the clear framework itself. I think for coaches to feel like they have a process for how to lead the world. Like that's maybe I'm restating it for myself, but I mean, that's what I'm so present to right now is we need a way as coaches to be present and active in our communities, in our world, on our social platforms, all the places where we're leading. Like we need a way to show up, because what most of us are not doing is showing up publicly. We show up really well for our clients, but we don't show up really well publicly.
So there's a need to show up publicly. And is your hypothesis that having a framework would allow people to show up more publicly and more consistently?
Yep, that's my hypothesis. Because it takes us out of our head, and it just gives us something to do. Like I don't have to think about how to do it. I just get to take the piece of the framework and go, I'm going to do this piece of the framework.
When we're in the explore section of the conversation, we're looking to gain a clear, complete, and mutual understanding of the need. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you ask closed-end questions to confirm the need. What I heard was the need is to get people to show up consistently. Mm-hmm. That's overall in their marketing, but also inside of each conversation, to show up in such a way that they have a method for each conversation, which then would allow one to share more about the way they're structured, taking people through conversations.
Yeah, right. Good. Yep, that's good. So we've talked about create. You and I have created something for this conversation. You have been, from the place of listening, you've been exploring. Are we at A yet? A is, remind me on A.
We just entered the A zone.
Okay.
And
the A zone.
And that is address.
Okay.
And to address is to speak to, the definition of address, speak to in a formal way. Mm-hmm. But inside of my concept of this, it's addressing two things. It's addressing your objectives, like where you want to go. How do we speculate on solutions for where you want to go? Mm-hmm. But it's also addressing any objections that you may have to where we're going to go.
Okay.
The explore are iterative processes. They're not like create, explore, address, resolve, mm-hmm. which is the R, is to resolve or solve mm-hmm. the need or provide a solution to the need. The whole thing is iterative. It's not like you're just in one part of things. But what's important to know is that in each place, you're checking to see if we have alignment or agreement. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, we know what the conversation is for. We're clear what Chris's needs are. Now we're going to address the needs. We're going to agree on solutions. We're going to speculate, and then we're going to get agreement on that so that we can resolve it and come up with next steps.
Right.
Because I believe that a conversation without action that comes out of it is kind of like going out to eat, looking at the menu, but never ordering.
Yeah.
And for your life coaches that we're serving right now, they're not really leading anyone anywhere if there isn't action that comes out of it. And of course, good life coaches get commitment, get agreement, and have stuff come out of it.
And there's no retention of clients when there's no action, right? Because somebody won't continue to pay for something when they're not getting the result they hired you. They thought that you were going to deliver to that. Like sometimes people hire you and they hope you save them, and that's not what we do. But there is a way for us to help them take action that that is important, because if they don't, like you said, or like I said, they won't stick around.
So in this conversation, when I'm asking you how I can support you and your needs, we're addressing your needs by having this recording, by having this conversation. It's already addressed. And you and I have a lot of rapport. So when you asked me to participate in this conversation, my first two words were, of course, like no hesitation.
Yeah.
wonder if it wouldn't be better to serve people listening to this if we took the example out of you and I and did an example of a problem that a typical life coach might be helped to solve people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yes. And I mean, just for the sake of completing the role play we've started, or the, the conversation we've started.
Yes.
I think we can complete it through A and R. And then we can do another one for sure. When I think about agreement, you agreeing to be on this show and have this conversation recorded, like there is agreement there. There might even be some agreement about like, by the end of this podcast, I would invite all of you listening to go check out Ivan's book. Like there is a place inside the book to dig deeper into the framework and the process. Like there is some agreement that and maybe that's the agreement between you and you, the listener, and me, the host here, is that, hey, could we find some agreement for stepping up in leadership? As much as you could benefit as a coach listening to this conversation and applying Ivan's clear framework to your sessions with clients, what I'm asking for is for you to show up in a bigger way in the world and for the coaching industry to lead. And so there is some extra agreement sort of between you and me that I'm trying to leak out to the listener. Like I'm looking for agreement there.
Yes.
And maybe the resolve towards the end of that is, sorry, go ahead.
Well, a conversation is leadership.
Right.
In my opinion. And I like a definition. There's many definitions of a conversation, but one of the definitions that I like is con is Latin for with, and verse, of course, is a song. And then shun is a state or a result. And so you're looking to lead someone to a result by singing with them in order to get there. And you have to have a result from a conversation. Yeah. And the skill that it takes to do that. I'll give you an example from my day-to-day job is, I'm encouraging people not just to stay with my company, but also expand the business relationship. And so that is a leadership talent. And of course, as a life coach, you want to create results for people and you want to have loyalty and longevity in those relationships.
Yeah. I mean, and I heard in that too, just that you had enough ownership of what you wanted to create. One of the things I bump up against with life coaches is there's a lacking in vision. So there's not enough ownership of what I as a life coach want to create in the world. It might be what I want to create for my financial life. Life coaches, I think, are very practiced in what do I want to create for my schedule and my autonomy, like the flexibility of my work and my work life and home life balance, so that work-life balance. But when I ask the question, what are you wanting to create in the world? There isn't an ownership of the create. So when you talk about a client, like there's this, but I want to expand. There's something I want to create with the client, which is also to go here. And they may not have thought about that. The client may not have thought about that yet, but I have. And I want to take it there. And that's what I want for coaches to do, is to not just meet the client where they're at. Don't just meet your coaching client where they're at, but think about where you're trying to take humanity. And how does this client and the conversations you're having with this client fit into the bigger picture of what you're here to create? That was there for me as you shared that.
Yeah. Well, what I hear is you're taking a stand, and you're taking a stand that other people take a stand.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you, you had offered to do the clear framework through another example. Do you want to do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Because what we were creating was that people, life coaches, could experience what the framework feels like. So, and this has been pretty meta, this one you and I doing. So let's do one more so that maybe they get a little bit cleaner experience of the conversation.
What would a conversation someone would bring to a life coach, or that you see in the clients you work with?
I would say there's a big thing for if I look at just humanity and where a lot of conversations are happening right now, people are feeling like, I want to live into more of my potential. What we've been doing has been reading books. We've been listening to podcasts. We've been doing a lot of information collecting, and it's not making a difference. It's not actually creating any change in me experiencing my potential. I just feel more behind and more overwhelmed. So that would be the context, right? I sit down and I'm like, I feel like I'm not living into my potential. I need more results. I'm not getting them. And it's not because I haven't been trying. Help me.
And are you the life coach, or are you the coachee?
I know it really could be either.
I'll be the life coach.
Let me just be the client, and that you're using the clear framework on, regardless of whether I'm a life coach or I'm a client of a life coach, doesn't matter. I'm a human who's having this problem of reaching my potential.
Got it. So Chris, I'm prepared to talk about ideas and strategies that will help you fulfill your potential. But maybe we could start by finding out from you, what is it that you actually want to accomplish in the world?
I want to put a dent in the world. I have a goal for 1 million members in my community of coaches. It feels very big, and I get that it's big. I think in the past I would have poo-pooed it, like, dude, that's you're being a dreamer right now. But I want to be the kind of person who doesn't relate to my vision and my dreams as something that's a joke. I want to be like, this is for real, and we're going to do it.
I'm stuck on the word dent. Can you tell me more about the word dent?
It might be cliche, just, the old Steve Jobs thing, like, let's put a dent in the universe. But like, I want there to be, I don't want to just help one person. I want there to be a significant shift in the vibration of the planet and humanity. Like, that's the game I want to play. I want to play the game called, let's do something big with this life. Let's not settle for something small.
Why do you need to do that for yourself?
To me, it represents, it captures my imagination. Like, I like thinking from that place. I suppose not everybody's that way, but for me, I like thinking from a place of like, what's possible. Sometimes things that are smaller just don't feel compelling enough. If it's too small, I'm kind of like, nah, I could do it. I don't need to do it. I don't know. But there's something about intellectually I'm stimulated when there's a big enough thing, and emotionally I'm stimulated because it feels like it matters.
The number 1 million, where does that come from?
It's an arbitrary number, but it feels like the kind of number that would have ramifications. There would be a ripple effect if there were 1 million people who were leading conversations in the world about the change they want to see from a place of love and light, not from a place of making others wrong. It would change the world.
How many people do you feel like you've impacted so far in your life?
In my life, it's hard to measure. I would say in the space of helping people find their message and lead their important work in the world, under 100 as it relates to people coming through programs, thousands as it relates to people interacting with social content, just my spheres of influence, things like that.
Someone had to suggest this to me because I was thinking pretty small about how many people I'd impacted. And she said, well, okay, you've sold X number of books, but think about the number of people that any given person also interacts with and how it ripples out.
Yeah.
And when you said 1,000, I think that that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. Because if you think about all of the people that you've led and then all the people that they've led and interacted with, like, you probably have impacted 1 million people already.
Yeah, I get that. That's cool. But if that's true, then it's like, well, I mean, I get the idea of that. And then there's like, okay, well, then I've done it. So what mountain am I climbing now? Well, 1 million members gives me a mountain to climb in front of me, like a game to play. I want to go play this game.
Right. Right. So what does that game look like?
I mean, in practical terms, it looks like creating, helping 1,000 coaches create communities where they have 1,000 members in their community. So 1,000 times 1,000 is a million. 1,000 coaches that create a community, which I have a whole membership model for. How does, life coach membership model is what it's called. It's how to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week. Like that, I have 1,000 coaches and I help them build their communities to 1,000 members. That gets me to 1 million. So that's the game broken down.
Yeah, that would be really inspiring. That is inspiring.
Yeah. And it feels tangible. Doesn't feel like just some number I picked. Now there's like a game, there's like a playing field to go play on,
How many coaches already are in that community?
I launched it in November. I've got 13 right now.
Okay.
Yep. And so the goal is to, I'm documenting the model as we go. So I've got 13. And then it's getting to 100. And then from there, it's getting to 1,000, which those are different growth strategies. How I get to 100 will be different than how I get to 1,000. But yeah, that's.
And if you were to invite me into it, what would the conversation look like?
If I were just doing a personal invitation, I'd say, hey, I've recently launched a coaching community, a community for coaches. I like to call it business church. It's like, we get together every Thursday for 90 minutes and there's rotating agenda. Like sometimes I'll teach, sometimes we do breakout sessions, but the heart of it is that so many of us as coaches, we do it alone. Like we tend to do our business alone, even though we love people. And there is something in the meeting together that creates an energy and a momentum you just don't get doing it alone. And I'd love to invite you. I think it'd be a good fit for you. I'd love to invite you to be a member. Does it sound like something like that? And you'd say, sounds good. Tell me more, or not interested, or you just say whatever you say.
Right. Well, you use the word invite, and you're inviting me.
Yeah.
And I either see an opportunity for myself at this time, or I don't see it at this time, but yeah. So what is the next step that you and I should undertake?
You as my coach, me as the one trying to live into my potential.
Yes.
I don't know. I was kind of hoping you had the answer to that.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
That just, I take a stand and listen to you like this is possible.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah.
And that you also listen for this being possible.
Yeah. Right. Got it. And just to be clear, where are we in? Are we in the A zone?
That was the resolution.
Oh, we already got to, okay. We already get to resolution.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Yeah.
We have agreement. We have agreement on next steps, which is not just right now. I have a coach that I always say, my request of you, coach, is that you just listen, that it's possible for what I'm speaking to be created in the world.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Because the need is assurance, or the need is overcoming self-doubt, because implicit in what you shared with me about this dent or this impact or this mountain is there's always some doubt. Like, can I do it?
Right.
Like skepticism. Right. Skepticism is really underlies a lot of whether I think I can do the big goal that I have.
Yep. Right. Yeah. The thing, it's fun to watch you be present in the conversation, having a framework. I think the thing I love about frameworks is it allows us to be present in the singing together, the conversation, right? The conversation, that there is a thing happening together here. There's a song being sung in this moment. And frameworks for me always allow me to know where I want to go next, but I don't have to touch that until it feels like that's where we want to go. And I couldn't tell where we were at in the framework because I was just engaged in the conversation, but you did. You knew where we were at and when to bring in resolution and not. And that's what's cool about frameworks.
And there was a series of open questions to gather information and explore. followed up with a closed-ended question to make sure I understood and that I was listening and that we could align.
Yeah.
So that's why when I say it's the sequence of open and closed-ended questions, that's really the key.
Oh yeah, I love that. And I think if you're a new coach listening to this episode, this is a great framework for a coaching session, like to move from what are we going to create in this session together to a resolution at the end where there's an agreement for action. That's a great framework for a coaching session. So if you're looking for something succinct that moves something towards action and not just towards talking about things in circles, this is a great framework for that. That was really good.
I would like to introduce another framework. May I?
Sure. Yeah.
So clear is the first framework in that it's a structure. But there are 5 elements that I think are really important to have as a part of every single conversation. And there's an acronym of rules. And so the way I approach conversations is with clear rules for my conversations. The R stands for rapport. The U stands for use questions skillfully. The L for listen. The E for exercise self-control. And the the S is to satisfy needs.
Yeah.
I find that if any of these 5 elements are missing from a conversation, it doesn't work the same way. So you and I have a rapport. If we didn't, we'd have to create it. If I was a life coach, if I was your life coach, I'd have to create some kind of rapport to get trust.
Right.
And then as we talked about already, the questions and using them skillfully is what steers the conversation. Of course, I'm listening along the way. And then exercising self-control in a conversation is something that is vital, because if rapport is not a one and done thing, rapport is ongoing, because you could have rapport in a conversation and rapport could go out like a candle, boom, gone.
Sure. Right.
So having the self-control and the awareness to hold back as well. And there's a challenge that most people have, and that is they want to give the solution too soon, before they've even understood and diagnosed what the need is, what the problem is. Here's the solution. Here's what you should do. So exercising self-control, listening, and then the approach is really needs-based. And I think that we all have human needs that need to be satisfied. So clear rules.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. Let me do the reveal here, which is so cool, because the acronym CLEAR works and rules work both for the thing I want to point to, which is, you and I have been having this conversation in the context of a coach and a client, a session where the coach, this is the work of coaching. We're doing the work of coaching right now in this place. And then if we take that, and what I'm inviting you, the listener, to think about for a minute is that these same rules, these same frameworks can work for you to lead the conversation in the world, not a conversation with your client, but to lead a conversation through your content, through your marketing, through your posts, through your blogs, through your videos, like all the things that you want to do to reach out into humanity. You are inviting them into a conversation. And in order for the conversation you're having with the public, not a client sitting across from you, with the public, it needs to be clear. So there needs to be something you want to create and something they want to create. And you never have to talk to somebody to figure out what that is. You just have to know who your tribe is. Because if you know who your tribe is, you make the assumption, these are my people, then you are also assuming what it is they want. And so now I'm bringing to the world, through my conversation that I record, an understanding and assumption of what it is you want, what I want. And I'm right. And so this is the reveal. Everything Ivan is laying out in this conversation with us is exactly the same for you going to be more visible as a leader in the world, leading a conversation. Thoughts on that, Ivan? Because they're your acronyms.
I mean, huge light bulb went off for me in that I've not applied that to my content. I have not applied my own rules, which, by the way, even inside of every conversation, I have to remind myself to apply my own rules.
Right.
But I have been searching I'm still searching for my tribe.
Yeah.
Right. My podcast is 250 episodes in.
Wow. So
And
good.
I'm still iterating
Yeah.
and searching, but I am becoming clearer.
Mhm.
I do think, and this has been attracting people into my life,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that is people's conversations. Like I'm leading a conversation for conversations, but conversations that can enable other people's conversations.
Mhm.
This is where we're so aligned,
Yeah.
right? Because you're a conversation for other coaches' conversations, and
Right.
I'm a conversation for other people's conversations, and both of us want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that reveal or epiphany is, oh, now when I create my content,
Yeah.
I can look at my clear rules. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always amazing when you find out that you're not following your own formula,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 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 And probably good too, because you're like, oh, well, this will feel way more familiar than I thought it would. Like you take your own thing that you have and you apply it now to this other place to apply it to, and it's going to feel more normal, more natural.
Yes.
To reiterate the two acronyms here for now that we've made this reveal. So clear is to create, listen, and learn. E is explore. A is assess. Is that right?
Address.
A is address, and R is resolve. So if you think about a podcast episode, if you think about a content calendar for the month of March or whatever it is, right? I'm going to create what I want to create and assume, because I'm assuming you're my tribe that also wants to create this. I'm going to create this thing, and we're going to I'm going to listen to other people talking on social media. I'm going to listen to my own intuition. I'm going to listen to what is unfolding. I'm also going to then explore the things I'm hearing when I listen in my podcast, in my show, in my Facebook post. Hey, I'm hearing this lately, and I'm going to make a post about it. And then next week, I'll share something else that I heard from listening. And this is us exploring together in the conversation, right? In the singing together of my content, we're exploring. Now I'm the one doing it and speaking because I'm not having a sit down conversation with you, but I'm assuming that you're in it with me if you're following along. So we're having a singing along together in my content. And at some point, then we get to a place where there's agreement, like, hey, do you want to make a difference in the world? So do I. If you do, and this could be a call to action, go check out Groundswell University or go check out Conversations, the book, because now this is how we can move it forward. So that's clear. That's using clear in the context of your content and you leading a conversation. Anything to add to that?
Yes and no, but it's clear.
Right. Right. Like it gives you a way to be like, okay, I see how because I think sometimes we think we're supposed to take pictures of our lunch for social media. We just do these. We think being more visible as a leader is hard. We don't know how to show up that way because it's not normal to talk to a camera or assume somebody's participation in a conversation.
It's funny that you mentioned taking a picture of your lunch, because my wife's gift to the world is her food. And sometimes the meals are so wonderful, I do want to share them with the world.
Yeah.
And I take a picture of them. Earlier today, I added up all the places that my content is being seen. And it never really occurred to me that I'm on 12 different platforms now.
Yeah. Right.
And when I share on one, I may share a little bit differently on the different platforms, but Chris, 12 platforms.
Yeah.
Like 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say to the people that are not necessarily showing up consistently yet, in order to lead a conversation that's going to make a difference for your chosen community, you have to take the step of hitting post. And if you're afraid to hit post, go ahead and hit post.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
because, and what, first of all, you, of course, were big inspiration and big teaching, learning for me. Like it's not that I wouldn't be here without you, but I'm going to say I wouldn't be here without you, because I remember the time that you said, I said, I don't really want to put it on the podcast registry.
Yeah.
And you said, why not? Why not? And
Right.
there was some excuse that I had.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I'm just going to go back to video. I'm going to go back to audio. No one's watching the YouTube channel. And I still feel like no one's watching it. And the stats are like, I've had 50 watch hours in the last 28 days. Like, people are watching it, right?
Wow.
I've had 400 views.
Yeah.
I still pretend nobody's watching. I do. Like,
Yeah,
it's just, but I think it's part of iteration, as you taught me. Yeah. It's part of a journey. Yeah. That's, to me, a conversation. We are singing together, and we're singing together on this journey. Mm-hmm. And you and I are like, I got a Conversations University, you got a Groundswell University. Mm-hmm. They're both stands for a conversation. They just, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. It's so fun. I appreciate that. It's so fun to watch you continue to lead your conversation. You had been leading your conversation about conversations. Well, before, you had written your book before we ever met. You spoke, you did training in your office and other places. Like you had been doing it. To watch you then take that more publicly through content, and to hear like 50 watch hours in the last 28 days, like 400 views, like to hear the statistics around. And I love that you send me updates on statistics, but to hear the stats around the visibility of your conversation feels good, because you're like, this is, what if all of us did this? What if all of us were leading the thing we felt called to lead publicly, not just in-house or with clients? What if you did it publicly? What if you all had 50 watch hours to perfect stranger you never met in the last 28 days? This is how we change the world.
Right. And I feel like it's interesting you used the word dent earlier. Mm-hmm. I feel like I haven't really made a dent yet.
Right.
Like,
right.
There's hundreds of thousands of content views consumed.
Right.
And I don't feel like I've made a dent yet. And there's reasons behind that. Like, I think that because there's no next step from the content, like, I'm not inviting people into a program, sure, which is something, of course, we worked in. Like, once I start to invite people into a program, it will feel more real, because there'll be a two-way conversation versus right now I'm versating, but I'm not conversating. There's no width.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. So that's another epiphany in this conversation, is I'm versating. That's all I'm doing is versating.
Yeah. There's a lot of versating out there. But you're close to the con. I mean, that's interesting thought, because the conversating part of it is there is, and that maybe that's a light bulb moment for me. I just haven't used this language for it before, but there is, you're making an assumption about who your people are. And that's who you con with. Who you con with is the assumption you make about who this is for. And a lot of times what we do is we don't know. What we say to ourselves as coaches, as content creators, is we say, I don't know who it's for. I don't know who my tribe is. I've done avatar exercises and they don't really work for me. I don't know what age or what gender. I don't know who my people are. It's very, very common, more common than maybe I thought. Most of us wouldn't be able to say who our people are. So you have to make an assumption.
Right. But so the first 200 episodes I did by myself, right? Just like what you taught me. Turn on the phone and start talking.
Yeah.
Right. And then now the last 50 episodes, I have a guest.
There's a con.
And what it turned, so now I'm mostly giving someone else a platform. Yeah. But it's also my platform. And so one of the things I resolved to do following this is to get really clear on my own platform and use my own model to create content going forward. Mm-hmm. But I really do like people, like, it really changes it, because I keep wanting people to comment and share and like my content. And what I realized, and you helped me realize this at one point, is no, I need to comment, like, and share on other people's content. Like, that's where I can contribute among other places.
Yeah.
But I'm up to almost 1,000 pieces of content in the last 6 years.
Wow. That's awesome.
And it really is, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, like not even denting the surface, but just scratching.
Yeah.
TikTok is the number 12 platform that I'm using. I don't know if you've been on TikTok.
I haven't done it yet. No.
I invite you to join us TikTokers. It's awesome.
Yeah.
There's something magical there. But anyway, I think what will enable you to make and include 1 million people in this, 1 million messengers, you can't be stingy with content. You can't be stingy with the number of platforms you're on. You got to put it out there.
Yeah. And to your point, like, it's an iteration. So the more you iterate the conversation you're leading, the more comfortable you'll feel in creating it. Once you create it, what I love about what you're doing is once you create it, it's easy to repurpose it to all the places. Like, you can share it to all the places, but what you can't do is be like, I need to be on all the platforms and not know what to say. Cause then you just feel shame and guilt and behind and pressure to create what for 12 different platforms. It doesn't work like that. At least that's not how I teach it, but
yeah, well, I'm hiding behind my guests right now. Like, if I'm really authentic about it, but I'm doing interviews, and the content that I'm putting out there are clips. You know, there's the episode where I'm interviewing people, and then there's the clips.
Yeah.
And it's easier to put someone else out there and highlight their conversation. But that's not necessarily a bad model, because I'm still the one producing and choreographing the message that I want out there. And there's been some really interesting themes in the guests that I've had. I mean, there's a whole theme around rewiring your conversation and re-recording your conversation. And there's a current theme running around your inner child and being kind to your inner child. And like, these themes are they're coming about, and I'm in favor of them because I'm leading a conversation about other people leading conversations. So that's been more inclusive. That has opened up things for me too.
Yeah. And I get you're I was gonna say a tough grader. I think you have high expectations of your leadership, and I get what you're saying, hiding behind interviews, and there's just a lot of iteration with playing with the format of things. Like, you did 200 where you didn't hide behind an interview. It was you showing up, and now we're playing with a new format. Like, I really like going direct to camera, but I also really like interviews because I like this type of conversating, this interaction with another person. And it's all just different angles. For my Groundswell University members, there's a private podcast, kind of like, think Patreon for a minute. Like, that is an extension of this show. So it allows me to lead. So I have a guest interview like this one. And then in Life Coach Labs Accelerator. So this is Life Coach Labs Accelerator, which is the private podcast for Groundswell University members. That's me taking each of these guest conversations and talking to my members about what I want to say about it. I'm like, hey, we just had this conversation. This is what I want to say. So there are so many ways you can play with this. I think the heart of it is go lead a conversation publicly with the world. And there's nobody better to wind it down. There's nobody better to learn conversations and the art of how to have a conversation that goes somewhere, that somewhere you want it to go, as well as where they want it to go. There's nobody better to learn that from than Ivan. So if people want to learn more about you, Ivan, and buy your book, where can they go?
Thank you for those kind words. Where people can go is conversations.biz. And if you go to conversations.biz, there's information about the book. There's a button to click over to where it is on Amazon. It's available on Amazon, Audible, Kindle.
Perfect.
And there's also my podcast, conversations.biz/podcast, where you can see the link to the platform that you prefer to engage in with podcasts, called Conversations About Content.
I love it. Conversations about conversations. So good. Well, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for all that you share. And it's so fun to be on this journey with you. So thanks, Ivan.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, that's it, gang. Thanks for listening to this episode of Life Coach Labs. Before I let you go, I want to invite you to two things. One, there is a companion Facebook group to this show called Life Coach Labs. Go to Facebook and search Life Coach Labs. You can see it here on the screen. If I scroll through, this is a companion group to the show because it gives me a chance to get to know you. I want to know you as much as you listen to me and my guests. I want to know you. I want to hear about your important work. I want to support you. So please head over to Facebook and join the free Life Coach Labs Facebook group. Number two, let's jump over to the next window here. If you are looking to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week, I have documented my community model, right? How do you do community? How do you build a membership model for your coaching that incubates the people you want to serve and do it in as little as 4 hours a week? You can head over to lifecoachlabs.com/model. You can see it right here on the screen, lifecoachlabs.com/model, and learn more about how to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week. Thanks for hanging out with me in this episode. And until next time, be well.